So this episode asks a dangerous question. Are autocracies winning the transitions war? Well, the data says no. But in fact, the optics say yes. And confusing the two is costing money, time, strategic advantage. Not good. So using the AWTY Composite Index of 2024, up to 2024, across all five transitions, the green, the digital, the new globalization, the war economy, and the housing crisis, democracies score on average 7.1 out of 10, while autocracies score 4.9. But during crisis, autocracies look faster. It looks like they react faster, they're cleaner, they're more decisive. And here's the decision question. Are we mistaking coordination speed for transition success? Well, in this episode, we break down where autocracies actually outperform, where democracies clearly dominate, and why confusing the two leads to bad funding and policy decisions. This episode of InnovEU, the EU Project Chronicles, is brought to you by my new book, Transition Science in the Economy. In it, I use data from more than 180 countries and 150,000 observations, data points, to show how five global shifts, five global transitions, the digital, the green, the new globalization, the transition to a war economy, and the housing crisis transition, how these five transitions are collapsing the middle class and rewriting prosperity and power. So if you want a clear map of today's economy and economic chaos, search for Transition Science in the Economy on Amazon and get your copy. So let's start with what AWTY actually measures. It doesn't measure GDP, it measures coordinated movement across five structural transitions: the green transition, the digital transition, new globalization, the transition to a new globalization, transition to a war economy, and the transition out of a housing crisis. Well, autocracies tend to score higher in short-term coordination dimensions. What does this mean? Does this mean? It means more specifically war economy mobilization. They mobilize fast. We've seen that in Russia. Strategic industrial policy execution. Well, you can see that in North Korea nowadays, this year as well. Good example. Large-scale digital infrastructure rollouts. Can think of an example nowadays, but if you look at the past examples, it's easy to find, for instance, Soviet Union electrifying all the territory, building all those railways with slaves and the Gulag system, but well, they did it faster than many non-autocratic countries, because centralized power reduces friction, and opposition doesn't count in this regime. So implementation comes fast. That creates what I called in the newsletter the illusion of efficiency. But AWTY is multidimensional, and when we disaggregate the data, democracies outperform in long-term prosperity drivers. Democracies score higher in housing affordability over time, in innovation diffusion across society, in green transition resilience, and in human capital retention. So progress is slower, but compounds, the gains compound. So autocracies optimize control and democracies optimize durability. Well, smart people get this wrong because they look at visible deployment. Highways, data centers, defense production, how many missiles manufactured, how many tanks. AWTY captures what is harder to see: institutional adaptability, distributed innovation, social resilience, long-term sustainability in the end. So let's take an example, what I call the speed trap. And let's make this concrete. Imagine two countries building digital infrastructure. Country A is an autocracy. It builds data centers fast. It rolls out 5G fast. Don't see what country I'm thinking about, don't you? It centralizes platforms under tight control, great firewalls. From the outside, this looks impressive, but here's where AWTY helps. It helps us see some differences. Who is actually benefiting from this? Are startups actually scaling? Is knowledge spreading across the economy? In many autocracies, digital growth is concentrated. A few large actors win. This could be applied to many autocracies all over the world nowadays. And you have a few large actors who win. So innovation does not spread widely. Now compare that to a democracy. The rollout is slower, messy. Sometimes regulation is messy. There is a lot of public debate and all the pros and cons are debated. But over time, more firms participate, more sectors adopt, more ideas circulate. And that diffusion shows up in higher AWTY composite score. And you can see the difference between 7.1 versus 4.9. Fast rollout is not the same as a strong ecosystems. And that's the advantage of democracies. They have an easier time building ecosystems. That's the real disadvantage of autocracies. They systematically weaken economic freedom because markets or market decisions are made by political loyalty, insider deals, crony access. AWTY reflects this through, well, weaker innovation spillovers, distorted housing markets, or fragile green and digital transitions. They make fast decisions, sometimes, not always, but the foundations are bad. So when looking at the transition strategy, stop asking how fast did they deploy and start asking, will these endure? Is this durable across all 5 AWTY vectors? Specifically check for innovation diffusion, for housing stability, human capital retention, and institutional feedback loops. If gains are concentrated and descent is suppressed, expect fragility in the long run. Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode.